The story unfolds as, when martial arts cultivation was in its beginning stages, monsters and demons rushed out from various space rift portals and threatened the existence of every living creature on Earth, and caused chaos everywhere. But in the midst of all this chaos, Lu Xing's consciousness traverses time and space, transporting him 10,000 years ahead in a dream world where the world had been destroyed by this massive catastrophe, leaving only ruins of civilization behind. The world was filled with several monsters that rushed out of space rifts continuously. The traces of human civilization had been long gone. However, amidst all this chaos stood a man with immense power and an unshakable spirit. He stood before the giant monster with a calm demeanor, with energy flowing out of his body. The monster looked like a colossal centipede, reaching the heavens with its size. The man's eyes blazed with bright energy as he took his stance to counter the colossal centipede. He just used a swift offensive technique, resulting in unleashing a devastating blow toward the monster. This seemingly heaven-defying blow incinerated everything in its way. The man looked like a martial arts grandmaster. A mystical glow can be seen radiating from his body. Have you ever woken up from a nightmare and found yourself in another nightmare? Lu Xing was now. Lu Xing! A stern voice exploded in his ears like a thunderclap. Lu Xing looked up dazedly, his face still showing the bewilderment and confusion of having just woken up from sleep. All his classmates were laughing at him, for always sleeping in class. The middle-aged man on the podium pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose and stared at him fiercely with a look seethed with hatred. There are just over 200 days left before the college entrance exam. You don't even think about working hard for your exams, yet still have the heart to sleep in class? With this attitude, even if you graduate and go to a construction site to move bricks, they may not want you. Do you know what the minimum blood standard for cement workers on construction sites is these days? Lu Xing replied, Teacher, it's 0.8. And has your blood chi value reached 0.8? Lu Xing lowered his head, rubbing his swollen temples while obediently listening to the class teacher castigate him. The teacher then dismissed the class. As the students were leaving, the little fatty sitting in front of him turned his head to look at him. Having nightmares again? His name was Lu Qiming, and he was considered one of Lu Xing's few friends. Lu Xing nodded, not saying anything, but with a strong look of helplessness in his eyes. He had been dreaming the same dream frequently for 3 days. Lu Xing could not describe what kind of dream it was, only remembered that the scene in the dream was very dilapidated, desolate, and depressing. He stood bewildered on top of a wilderness, with roaming monsters all around. It was a nightmare, there was no doubt about it. Because after encountering this dream, he became very drowsy, and the quality of sleep turned incredibly poor. Although he slept for more than 12 hours a day, he looked like he had been sleep-deprived due to insomnia continuously for the past few days. So much so that during these 3 days, Lu Xing's blood chi value, BQV, had slipped by 0.02. Lu Xing's mood was simply terrible. Lu Xing, heading to the internet cafe, huh? Facing Lu Qiming's invitation, Lu Xing shook his head. No, I'm not going. I'll go home. Going home so early? It's not like your style. Let's go to the cafe. I'll pay for all the drinks and charges today. Lu Qiming patted his chest and sincerely invited. But Lu Xing still shook his head and explained. I really don't want to go. I want to go back early to catch up on my sleep. You slept all day in class today, and you're still sleepy? Lu Qiming had an exaggerated expression on his face. Lu Xing did not bother to explain further. Lu Qiming still wanted to persuade Lu Xing when several boys called him from afar. Lu Qiming took a final look at Lu Xing, and did not say anything else. He left Lu Xing and sped towards the other few boys running ahead. These people bustled towards the school's entrance, and quickly scattered away in all directions. Lu Xing let out a soft sigh as the thoughts in his mind began to churn. He had almost forgotten that he had been living in this world for 18 years. Lu Xing's memories of his previous life had turned very vague, and sometimes he even wondered if it was all just a dream. In that world of his previous life, there were no martial arts, and there were no monsters that ran out of the cracks in the ground. The sun was setting down with a warm glow spreading over the city as Lu Xing reached his old apartment. Lu Xing pushed open the door to his home. He saw his dad, Lu Dehai, lying on the arm of the sofa, and his mother, Xing Yufan, tearing open a plaster to find a suitable spot on Lu Dehai's back. Lu Xing noticed his dad's patched-up back. His eyes stung for a moment. He shouted, "I'm home!" Despite the injuries, his parents' faces lit up at the sight of their son. Lu Xing shook his head and dragged his school bag in the direction of his room. Lu Dehai quickly got dressed, but the bandages can clearly show the immense effort that he put into work to provide for his family. Lu Xing stopped halfway, turned his head to the sofa, and whispered, "Why not go back to buy a blood combustion device? That thing can stimulate the blood, relax the tendons, and activate the body. Massage healing will also be very useful." But his father, ever strong-willed, flexed his bicep and said, "Hey, what kind of injury do you think I have? I will be fine in a few days. That is money that we might as well put aside and buy you tonics." Suddenly his father took out 2 small bottles which he presented to Lu Xing. It was a new medicine to increase blood value, and it costs a huge amount of $20,000, which is a fortune for a family like theirs. Overwhelmed by his father's gentle care, Lu Xing struggled to hold back his tears. His parents asked him, "How is your recent blood Qi value? Did you break through to 0.85? I saw on the news today that the cutoff for this year's college entrance examination for undergraduates will be increased by 0.01. I know, I'll go back to my room to exercise." Lu Xing's chest immediately tightened as he heard those words, and he rushed into his room. Lu Xing closed the door to his room and breathed a sigh of relief. Only when he stayed in this small room that belonged to him alone did he have a chance to relax. Lu Xing put down his school bag, took off his coat and pants, and then sat down on the yoga mat. After calming down a bit, Lu Xing took a deep breath and silently recited in his heart, "13th set of radio gymnastics, start." Subsequently, Lu Xing's body began to pose one movement after another. These movements were somewhat similar to yoga, but they were very different from yoga, and it was quite apt to use gymnastics to describe them. The World Martial Alliance's 24 forms of martial refinement are said to be created by the masters of the alliance based on ancient yoga, ancient martial arts, ancient jujitsu, etc. They are most suitable for giving beginners in martial arts a foundation. Ever since the world changed drastically more than 300 years ago, when a rift appeared in heaven and earth, and numerous strange and horrible monsters emerged from the earth, and the trajectory of the world's development changed completely. After most of the thermal weapons lost their effectiveness in fighting the monsters, human beings began to look for new ways and means to defend themselves. Perhaps because of the emergence of monsters, and facing the enormous pressure of genocide, a certain genetic lock in the human body was broken. Individual strength rose to peaks that were never before thought possible. Martial arts developed at a rapid pace, changing day by day. But even so, on the battlefield, fighting against the monsters that encroached and swallowed up human territory, humans were still at an absolute disadvantage. And every day another town or city fell into the hands of these monsters, and the human population continues to dwindle. This is what the class teacher told Lu Xing and the others from time to time. Lu Xing stopped practicing those body movement exercises and sat on his yoga mat, slowly adjusting his breathing. He did the 24 sets of body movements of the body refining technique 3 times in one breath. A thin layer of sweat perspiration out of his body, and his originally pale face had a few more patches of redness. So far, Lu Xing hadn't found the reason for his nightmares. Lu Xing rested while having nonsensical thoughts. While he was thinking, sleep came to him in tides and waves. Lu Xing unconsciously yawned, his eyelids drooped, and his body slowly lay down and gradually drifted off to sleep. The leaden gray sky, black earth, everywhere filled with a trace of gray fog. Depression, despair, and desolation were everywhere. The first thing that Lu Xing saw when he woke up was this scene in front of him. It's this nightmare again. Lu Xing was completely helpless. Lu Xing vigorously grabbed the flesh on his arms and face, trying to wake himself up from the dream, but to no avail. Unless a specific point in time did not meet, he would remain here, stuck in this nightmare. Very quickly, the gray mist not far to his left dispersed, and a tall, stiff human form appeared behind him. The figure